Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Maria Athena and today I'm here with a guest star.
Hi, I'm Julie.
So can you tell us why you're here today?
I'm visiting you and we're going to make a video talking about learning different languages.
Because we are both super nerdy language learning people and we have some questions here that we wrote out that we want to ask each other. So if you guys want to answer these questions, they're all down in the description box. We're gonna speak English for the majority of the video
because I don't know German.
That's our one mutual language that we share in speaking. So if you want to do this question tag thing, then just look in the description box and send me a link to it because I'd love to watch it.
I would too.
Okay, first things first, introduce yourself and where you're from so that we can get kind of an idea of, you know, what area you're from and, you know, how language learning material is in your
Alright, well I'm Julie, like I said, and I am from around Baltimore in Maryland, USA, and I'm 22, if that makes a difference.
And she's feeling 22 as well. Same here. A lot of you guys already know I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, technically an hour right outside of there, and I am also 22, as already stated.
Are you feeling 22?
I am.
Okay. So I started studying Spanish when I was in kindergarten, so like 5 years old, and then I started taking Latin in high school as a sophomore and a junior, and then my freshman year of college I began taking Mandarin and also Italian, and then English is my native language, American English.
So you only learned languages through school? Did you try to learn any by yourself, or?
No, I've only ever learned languages in like a formal classroom setting, outside from my own personal travels, but those really weren't like an endeavor for learning. They were more just traveling.
Alright, so kind of a follow-up question, are there any languages that you're pretty familiar with in addition to the ones that you studied, or?
Nothing outside of what I've studied. I know some German because of you, and I feel like I can recognize German now and understand bits and pieces.
Should add here, we actually lived together in college, so she saw all of my German videos, stuff as they were coming out.
Most of the videos of Maria's that you've watched, I was in the room while she made them.
Props. Yep.
Aside from that, before I started learning Italian, my great-grandparents came from Italy, so select people in my family know bits and pieces of broken Italian dialects, but nowhere near the traditional Tuscan Italian that's like the certified language of Italy. So really nothing outside of that, outside of a formal setting. Most
of the languages that I've learned them outside of school. I'll say first the ones that I learned in school, and those were Spanish and French. I learned Spanish for 1 year, my senior year of high school, and French for 4 years all throughout high school. Actually, when I think back to it too, I did a couple mini programs in Spanish when I was in grade school, but that wasn't really intensive learning at all. You learned colors, you learned shapes, and that was it. Apart from that, I've studied Irish in a formal setting, and then my German major I studied in a formal setting. On the whole though, I would add a whole bunch of random different languages, which actually I'm going to make a video soon about all of the different languages that I learn / speak / have information about, so look out for that. But in general, I would say Dutch, Russian, a little bit of Polish, a little bit of Czech going in with that, you know, barely any to get by, but you know, next time I go on vacation I'll definitely brush up on those. Certain German dialects, and that's Greek. Yeah, Greek. Oh yeah, Greek, Irish, little bit of Turkish, lots of different stuff, but all of that's outside of any formal education.
I was trying to think, there's probably some really cool grammatical things in Chinese that I'm forgetting right now, but I really do like in Spanish, and I feel like it's generally the same in Italian, how you can just say hablas español as like a sentence, you know, you speak Spanish, and then literally just say the same exact thing but just change your intonation, like hablas español, and then that just makes it a question. Like in English, you know, we can say, you speak Spanish, but then to make it a question, we have to say, do you speak Spanish? So like...
Or, you speak Spanish? Like,
yeah,
you know, very intonated kind of thing.
Right, so it takes very little effort to make something from a statement to a question, in most cases like that, in Spanish. And like I said, I think it's pretty much the same in Italian. Favorite word? Again, there's probably a better answer that I'm not thinking of, but I'm a little bit on the spot. I really like the word gui in Mandarin, which I'm really bad with the tones, which we're probably going to talk about later. Yep. But it was one of the first words we learned, because if anyone's taken like basic Mandarin, some of the first things you learn are like how to ask for people's names. That's pretty common among all languages.
Yeah, especially in your first like week of lessons, you know.
Right. So in the Chinese culture, there's like a lot of emphasis on your family name. So one of the first things they teach you is not only how to ask for someone's first name, but like to ask for their family name. So it's Qingwen Ni Gui Xing. So Qingwen is like, may I ask you, or like that's like please, or kind of, and then Ni is you, and then the Gui, it means expensive, but it's also just like an honorific kind of adjective. So it's basically saying like, can I ask you your honorable last name? And it's like, if you're really just trying to like butter someone up or like just be really respectful, you'll say that. And I don't know, like Qingwen Ni Gui Xing, like I just like the sound of that. And then like I said, it means expensive too. So whenever we were, you know, in little Chinese like shopping towns or whatever, like little markets, like I went to a great one in Xi'an, you know, and you're bargaining, you could just say Tai Gui La, like that's way too expensive. I just like how it sounds. Just, yeah, it's a good word.
Okay, so my favorite grammatical rule, and anyone who's listened to me speak German or ever read something I've written in German will know that I'm obsessed with the subjunctive, with the two forms of it. One, quoting something that someone else has said and then indicating whether or not I believe them or don't believe them, which is really fascinating, and I try to do that in English all the time, but it's not as easy to be able to do in English. And also the super hypothetical subjunctive, where you're, you know, if I would, I could, but I wouldn't if I couldn't, kind of thing. And then when it comes for a word, I would probably say, actually some of the Greek colors, like the basic colors, like citrino, cocchino, prasino, portocali, those are all super cool words that I remember always thinking were cool when I was growing up. So basic Greek colors are words that I think are generally really cool. Scudoble, that's also a nice one. Also, I just remembered a German word that I really enjoy including into every piece that I write in German, for the most part, is nichtsdestotrotz, which, speaking English and then saying that word is difficult, but yeah, nichtsdestotrotz. Und, oh, there's another one.
Mein Kleiner.
No, well, if you ever hear me speaking German on a regular basis in the States, most of what you'll hear me saying around native speakers, it's like, oh, der kleine Hund, oh, der ist so süß, oh, das Hündchen. That's what everyone I know hears me saying in German all the time. So I should say that's one of my favorite things to say, at least, or my most frequently said phrase.
My impression of Maria speaking German always consists of, oh, mein kleiner Schmidt.
Yeah, insert any animal there.
Usually bunnies.
Die sind so süß.
In 2010 and 2011, in the summer, I had opportunities to go to El Salvador for a week with a church group. And going to a native Spanish-speaking country, and you know, a week is not a long amount of time, but that did wonders really for just me breaking out of my comfort zone, speaking Spanish, getting out of the classroom and just speaking it with people my same age who I knew weren't gonna judge me because their English was about at the same place my Spanish was. So there was a lot of Spanglish going on in between me and my friends. And I felt like, you know, after the first few days, I was really able to just go at it. Like, can I say balls to the wall?
Yeah, because that is technically
a pilot term.
Yes.
I was just really able to go at it like balls to the wall, just speak Spanish and kind of not really care if what I was saying was wrong, or oh, was that verb conjugated perfectly, but just really just speaking it and kind of figuring out your mistakes along the way instead of worrying too much about making a mistake. And a week was not nearly a long enough time to really improve, because I felt like right as it was time to leave was right when I was getting good. But definitely just immersing yourself in speaking it with other people who are native speakers really helps. One, for the comfort zone and just for the practice, and you know, they'll help you along the way with the mistakes you need to fix.
I'd say when it comes to fluency, I think the number one thing you need is variety. And I'll talk more about this in a different video, which I feel like I'm just plugging future videos sometimes when I'm talking, but variety in the sense that you're not just doing things at your level. You might have been learning a language for 3 weeks in school, so all you know how to say are the colors and how to introduce yourself. That doesn't mean that you should only try to have conversations about those things. You should also listen to music that's, you know, kind of above your level. Listen to songs that are like the basic, like 1, 2, 3, here we go, here's the colors, and also like really in-depth songs about like totally, you know, intense topics, so that you can get one understanding at the basic level that you're already at, but then you pick up so many things passively by listening to things that are more difficult, which is, in my mind, what happens also in like a little bit in going into psycholinguistics here. When you're speaking to kids, or when kids are learning their first language, they're not only here, you know, only hearing one word at a time. They're also hearing in the background their parents talking about a whole bunch of different topics where they might not understand, you know, what's being said, but they're still hearing all that stuff. So it just, you need to have the difficult stuff kind of in the back of your mind, and then once you get to that point, you'll be like, oh, that's weird. I already know all these words, all these, you know, grammatical structures somehow. Like it's I'll talk about it more, but I think that's really important, variety. Yeah,
I remember like my kindergarten Spanish class, our teacher would always tell us, you know, siéntense, which means like, you know, all of you guys like sit down to the class. And so, you know, for years I heard siéntense and like knew what that meant, but it wasn't until like 7th or 8th grade Spanish when we started getting into, you know, like direct commands to like a plural group and like reflexive verbs and all that, that I could really break down the phrase siéntense and realize like where it comes from and why it's conjugated and formed that way. But it was really cool to be like, oh, okay, like I've understood this phrase for so long, and then that helped me understand doing commands with reflexive verbs for like the rest of Spanish verbs, because I understood that one because it had been drilled into me for, you know, 10 years. Like I said, I started off with Spanish, took Latin in high school, so I was really on the like romance language track, and I picked up Italian in college, but I really wanted to break out of my comfort zone and go for Mandarin with, you know, it's a tonal language, it's just, you know, from the other side of the world. A lot of the Asian languages tend to be a world apart from Romance languages and, you know, even English, which has a lot of romantic influences. And so, you know, the writing system is different. The culture that, you know, the people that speak that language experience is just totally different. So it was like a really big, like 180, and I was ready to do that. So I think that's probably the coolest. And, you know, like when people ask me, what languages do you know? I'm usually like, oh, I speak Mandarin is like the first thing I want to say. Like, that's like my party trick, is that like I know Mandarin, I guess.
Yeah, so when it comes to the coolest, I'm not going to go with German here. German, I think, is a fascinating language. I absolutely love it, as is apparent, on this channel. But a really, really cool, probably the coolest language I've worked with to a decent extent has been Middle English, which you know from living with me.
Oh, God.
Middle English is like the perfect middle ground between German, any German dialect, and older forms of German and modern English, where it's, if you speak German or Dutch or English and then you're looking at Middle English, it's kind of like a conglomerate of all of those different things together, which is super, super cool. And the pronunciation is super awesome. I could, you know, just fangirl all day about why Middle English is so cool. Mainly, the number one thing that I think is interesting about it is how, for instance, when you're reading like Cantor's Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, in order for the rhymes to make sense, you have to elongate certain syllables in comparison to other ones, and there's this like stressed A that is sometimes pronounced, sometimes not pronounced, and you'll know based on how many syllables there are in a certain line, which is super cool, is all I can say about it.
I really like Middle English too. I haven't studied it even close to as much as you have, but just, you know, studying Chaucer in high school, and then just like with the few linguistics classes I've taken, you know, anyone who speaks English is usually going to run into examples of Middle English somewhere along the way. And I know it's like a thing of the internet to just like complain about how difficult English is and like how it makes no sense and like the spelling is just awful because we have so many silent letters. How it's
super easy to learn, but that's a whole different topic.
But like looking at Middle English, I just really like, because just being a language nerd, it's just so much fun to look at how things used to be spelled, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's why they're spelled that way in English now, and you know, the pronunciation has just kind of changed. Or, you know, like,
or if you pronounce a word the same way that it used to be pronounced, however the spelling is different because of the time change. That was weird,
like the word knight, like a knight in shining armor, like that used to be like knisht.
Yeah.
And you know, like we still spell it the same way today, so people might be like, oh, it makes no sense, why do we spell it like that? But like it really is cool to like see the history of the English language, especially for a native speaker. Like I said, I, you know, spent a little bit of time in El Salvador. Also, when I was a really little kid, I think it was after I had 1 year of Spanish in kindergarten, I went on a cruise around the Mediterranean with my family, and we picked up in Spain, so there were a lot of Spanish people on the cruise. And we played hide and go seek with a bunch of the little kids, and I was so happy because I could count to 10 in Spanish after my kindergarten class, so I could still play hide and go seek with them because I could just count to 10 and then go look for them. So that was like, you know, ways to use your basic language skills. But I haven't had too much experience using the Italian that I know. I haven't been to Italy, I don't think. I haven't been to Italy, and I'm really hoping to go there sometime soon, but like I said, my great-grandparents are from there, so we have some really distant relatives that live over there, and some of them have come to visit us in years past, and I've used the very beginnings of my Italian skills. And I have a cousin, I think a third cousin, coming to visit at the end of this month actually from Italy, so hopefully he speaks English, or hopefully my Italian can get us by. And then in the fall of 2012, I spent 4 months studying abroad in Beijing for a semester, so I was able to use a lot of my Mandarin while living there, though it didn't get me as far by as I thought it would, because in China there's so many dialects happening that Mandarin's only going to get you by in certain cities and not really the rural places that we went to and spent like half the time in. So, but definitely got a lot of use with my Mandarin there, and was really glad I had 2 years of that before I left.
Yeah, so I've luckily had the opportunity to go to a lot of places where I can be immersed in the languages that I learn. I have relatives who live in Greece, relatives who live in Canada, so when I'm staying with them, I can practice my French, or I can practice my Greek, you know, even the basic minimal level of Greek that I have. I also have lived with different people from different countries, or met a lot of people through study abroad and stuff like that. So I have friends who, if I ever have questions with Russian, or a lot of Cyrillic languages, I could just, you know, message them on Skype and ask my questions. The same thing with German, obviously. I not only have gotten to go to several Germanic, or several countries that speak Germanic languages, but also gotten to familiarize myself with the dialect, and I have luckily a lot of people that I can ask questions to and just like talk with on a general basis whenever I'm, you know, looking for chat, practice my language skills.
Follow up on that question that I totally skipped over. It was an international study abroad program, so it wasn't just students from the US going to Beijing. We had people from, you know, Colombia, Portugal, Germany, Spain, the Philippines, you know, a whole bunch of different countries, and there were about 60 of us. So any given day I could be speaking English, Mandarin, Italian, and Spanish all in the same day.
I always
which is
love days
very
like that.
overwhelming. I love it, but it can get very overwhelming.
One of my favorite conversations I ever had was I was staying with my sister's host family in Switzerland, who they're French-speaking Swiss family, and the kids both learned German as well, and they all spoke English. But when we actually got down to talking, I was speaking in German because we got into kind of a, you know, like politics and like kind of more complicated subjects. So my French is not that good to be able to keep up with that, but I could understand them, and I was responding in French, and my dad was, I was responding. Sorry, it was a, you know, total crazy language chat.
Right.
They were speaking French. I was speaking German, and my dad was speaking English and French, and my mom's sitting there because her French is not really there. But it was a great conversation. It lasted for several hours, and it was the like most perfect trilingual conversation I've ever had. It was totally awesome. Everyone understood each other to a decent extent. I was very pleased with that conversation.
One of my favorite things about the last year at school, which, like we said, we were roommates, and one of our other roommates studied abroad in China with me, and she's taken Mandarin for like twice as long as I have. And so just studying abroad in China together really brought us closer, and we like knew each other's levels of speaking Mandarin, and we would just go into side tangents in the middle of conversations with our other roommates and just go on speaking Mandarin and like the weirdest voices and like totally improper grammar, but just having great conversations in Mandarin.
And some of us would just be like, Mayo Ijin.
I've taught her a few phrases.
I do not. I'm not learning Chinese right now. Cantonese or Mandarin.
Or anything else.
Or anything else. No, I have some books, but not officially learning.
We'll get her eventually, guys.
Yep, eventually.
I don't really consider myself bilingual. I feel like when I think of bilingual people, I usually tend to think of someone who was raised in a bilingual household. It's just like what immediately comes to mind, which I definitely was not. I'm basically the only person in my entire extended family that speaks a foreign language with any degree of like close to fluency. At a time, my Spanish was getting really close to what I would have called full fluency, but it's been a while since I've kept up with it, and I'm really slacking in that department right now. Was focusing a lot more on the Mandarin and the Italian just because with school that's what I'm studying and had to focus on that more for grades, but I'm hoping to get back into it with Spanish, and I have plenty of friends who speak Spanish as their native language and stuff, and I'm hoping to get back into it, practice a little more, and maybe get fluency down with Spanish eventually. But I'm not bilingual or anything. I just kind of know bits and pieces of different languages, enough to get by in those countries, but nothing full fluency, no.
So I'm really kind of strict when I answer this question, and I always make sure to clarify really clearly what I'm talking about. For the most part, if people ask me what languages I speak, I will only say I speak 3 languages. And so I would consider myself trilingual when most people ask me that question. Because most people, at least who have come to me and said, you know, oh, what languages do you speak? They're looking for not the languages that I understand, because I could, you know, go off and be like, oh, well, this dialect and this, and no, it's mostly been what languages can you speak in? Could you have conversations with people in on a daily basis and, you know, not really have a difficult time with that? So I always say 3. I'm trilingual. However, because language is so diverse and there's so many different components that you have to take into account, like your reading level in certain languages versus your speaking level, there are some languages that I read very well in that I don't speak as well in, or that I can't write in, but I can understand when it's being spoken. And in that sense, there's like upwards of 7 languages where I feel comfortable with basic things, where I wouldn't say I know those languages, but I would say that's heading towards polyglottism. So in general, I would say I'm multilingual. Haven't mastered all of the languages that I'm studying, but it's getting to that, you know,
Yeah.
more advanced.
When people ask me, like, oh, do you speak any other languages? I usually say, well, I know other languages, but the degree to, like, my speaking with Chinese is so much better than my listening or, like, my reading or anything. Italian, I could listen to you speak Italian, read Italian all day and understand completely, and I could not respond back to you at all.
Which also depends what you want to use the languages you're learning for. Because with some languages, like with Greek, I want to be able to speak Greek with my cousins.
Right.
I'm not going out there to learn Greek like I learned German so that I can study, you know, at university. But if I would, you know, have the opportunity to do that, who knows? Yeah. But as for now, you know, think of your, like, language goals, kind of.
Yeah. I feel like I know enough Spanish, Italian, and Mandarin to get around countries where those languages are spoken. I feel pretty confident about that. Don't put me to the test, but I feel pretty confident.
So thanks for watching, everyone. We hope you liked our, you know, question and answers video about learning languages and stuff. So if you have any questions for us about our language learning experiences, feel free to write a comment under this video or send a personal message, whatever.
And if you want Maria to learn Chinese, give it a thumbs up.
Yes. Or also, if there's a language which you think I should start learning seriously, you know, write your recommendations, and if there's one that seems to be super popular, I'll maybe take a look at it this summer while I have some extra time to do that.
She has a lot of extra time.
Also, in the next 2 weeks, I will be making videos again every Wednesday and opening up my second channel as well. So look out for that in the next 2 weeks.
All right.
Good, good. Bye!
Bye.